Welcome, everybody. You're not going to believe this, but I've been talking away for 15 minutes thinking that I had started the webinar, and I guess I forgot to click the all-important start the webinar button. Sorry about that. Sorry for the delay, and thank you for your patience. Yeah, it's funny. Sarah says, "Oh my God, I was afraid they took you down." No, not yet. Okay, so let me start over. Wow, how crazy. Let me just introduce myself real quick. I want to give you a little bit of background. I'm the founder and CEO of Sales Nexus, which is a CRM and marketing automation system. And, so I've been building technology for a long time, but I was not actively political. I paid attention, I watched Fox News, I voted, but that's about it. I wasn't actively engaged in much of anything beyond that. I was an early user of Parler, during 2020 when it started to really get popular. I got on there and really liked it. Then, in late 2020, when we started to see all of the crazy censorship happening, it just blew me away. I couldn't believe it, really. It took me a little while to process it. And then, as some of you know, Parler was shut down by Amazon because they were allowing people to post about, election fraud and stuff like that. And so at that point, I just decided, okay, I can't sit on the sidelines and watch this happen. I got to be involved. Whatever's going to happen, I want to make sure I was at least in the game. So one thing I decided to do is I decided to move Sales Nexus off of AWS, Amazon's web services. All our servers were on AWS. So that was not a trivial exercise. It took us almost a year to do it. But we did it. And now we're off. We're saving money. Really, it's better in all kinds of ways, but I won't bore you with all that right now. Other ways I got involved, I became a precinct chair here in my local area. I'm an election judge now. I get to do that for the first time on Tuesday. So that'll be fun. And along the way, I started reaching out to organizations that I felt like were, really getting the truth out, right? So I started working with Star News. If you haven't looked at Star News and their different sites for different states around the country, definitely worth checking out. And I reached out to Daily Clout, and Dr. Wolf and I started talking, and the rest is history. But point being, all along, to me, what I felt was a very important initiative is to help people get off of the big tech platforms. And so today is really the first time that we're kind of launching this initiative. Dr. Wolf and I have been talking about it ever since I met her. And I'm so excited that we're finally getting it started. So hopefully this is just the first of many discussions like this. So what I want to do today is kind of give you a little background, why are we doing this? What's the point? What's the objective? And then get into some specifics about things you can do today. Most of you probably know about most of this, but just to be sure, Dr. Wolf was censored by Twitter and Facebook back in early 2021, I think it was, when she was starting to hear from people about harm from the vaccine. And let's see. Hang on a second, guys. I want to make sure that I'm being heard and everything now. Yeah, I think I am. Okay. All right. So, Dr. Wolf was censored. Donald Trump was censored. Parler got shut down, like we talked about earlier. Then, if you remember earlier this year, the Canadian truckers had the protest up in Ottawa, and they were raising money via Give, Send, Go, and Give, Send, Go shut them down. The War Room and a lot of others have been canceled by YouTube. You know, we know about this, right? They've been doing this, kind of doing it right out in the open, you know, in your face, right? The problem is that what you may not realize is that we're allowing it to happen. We are paying for it, really. So we are enabling it. And more importantly, we can take that enablement away, right? That's what we want to talk about today. So let's get into how we're going to do that. First, a little bit of, you know, kind of putting things in perspective. I think that there's a lot of people who are of the mindset of, you know, hey, when after the midterm elections, there's going to be a new Congress and there's going to be all kinds of investigations and so on. And there's going to be antitrust suits and they're going to break up Google and Facebook and so on, right? Well, I wouldn't bet on it. You know, if you look at this, Amazon and Facebook are in the top 10 of spenders on lobbying in Washington, D.C. That means they have a lot of influence, and doesn't matter whether you got an R or a D next to your name, that money is hard to walk away from, right? So they're going to have committee hearings and stuff like that, and they're going to bring Zuckerberg in there for the umpteenth time and grill him. But, you know, whatever actually happens, I wouldn't count on a lot. I hope they do, but I don't think we should be sitting around banking on it. You know, here's more specifically what each of these big tech companies are spending on lobbying. Just then, this is 3 years ago, so I'm sure it's gone up. Now, if we just drill into Google, just to kind of focus on them, because they're the most widely used because of all the different platforms, and also probably have more cultural and also political influence than a lot of the other big tech names. The good news with Google is it's easy to understand their business model. It's pretty simple. They make money from ads, right? They do some other stuff. Google Cloud's like a hosting thing, kind of like AWS, but it's a small piece of the pie. Most of their revenue comes from the advertising. And all that advertising is driven because of all the information that they take from you. If you don't use the platform, they don't have the information. I, as a advertiser, have used all these platforms to advertise and spent a lot of money on it over the years. And it's awesome. It's great because you can be really specific. You know, maybe I want to run an ad for people in, you know, certain cities only with, you know, a certain income and that have a certain model of iPhone or a certain model of computer or have recently shopped for, you know, a home or shopped for, you know, something really personal, right? And we've all seen how those ads start popping up, right? It's very effective as an advertiser, but it doesn't work if you don't use their system and give them the data about you to sell to the advertiser, right? So that's the power that we have. Another thing that you may not be aware of is that they're handing that data over to the government too. You can see here, this is a graph of countries that have requested user data from Google. And the blue is how much data they handed over, and the orange is the additional data that was asked for that Google did not comply with. So you can see for instance, in Germany, most of the time they don't comply. In the US, they get asked all the time and they're handing it over almost all the time. So your data is being collected and sold to advertisers. And then also whenever whenever the FBI or some other government agency feels like you're, part of the wrong group, Google hands them that data so that they can start tracking you and doing whatever the FBI does with that data. So that's kind of scary too. There's a lot of people posting some really helpful information here. Somebody's talking about Snowden and the NSA. I would definitely recommend, there's a couple documentaries about Snowden. You can also look up Glenn Greenwald, who's the reporter that helped break the Snowden story. He's doing a lot of writing about government surveillance and the lack of privacy. He's really deep into that subject and right on the cutting edge of it. Okay, so the other thing that we need to consider is that you have a lot more economic power than you think. This is just, some data I pulled from the web to give you an idea demographically, on either side of the aisle, how things work out. You can see that Republicans tend to have more buying power. I would also say, just in my own experience, running a business that sells software to small businesses, that small businesses tend to be run by Republicans more often. So the point of all that is that if you're a business owner, for instance, and you decide to do something about all this, you're not influencing just yourself. You're influencing your whole company, right? If you're the leader of a nonprofit, same thing. When you encourage your team to use Gmail, what are you doing sort of not by omission? You're influencing them to also use Gmail in their personal life, right? If you make a switch to some other platform, now you're helping your team, your employees, people you work with, see how easy it is to move to something else, to get experience with it. That's really the problem, is that we all kind of are stuck, right? Because we don't think we can do it because we just don't know anybody else doing it, right? Or we don't know very many. And it's just hard. And well, I shouldn't say hard. It's not really hard, actually. What I've been doing over the last several months is going through the change myself and switching off of these platforms. As I mentioned, I switched my company off of AWS. I've recently been investigating different alternatives to Google Docs, and I've switched off of Gmail. I switched my browser and so on. We're going to talk a little more about all of that. But what I wanted to do is make sure I had done it first and kind of figure out where the roadblocks are so that I could steer you guys around all that and make it as simple and easy as possible. Because if all of us that feel the way we do take action, then good things are going to happen. We've seen this here in the last few months, right? We've seen what's happened with Twitter. As soon as people started becoming aware that there were issues with their, huge percentage of their users being bots, as soon as Getter and Parler started really taking off, that's when Twitter's power started to change, right? So if we stop contributing our information to these platforms, they will notice sooner than you think. Okay, a little bit of just putting things in perspective. We surveyed our audience, the Daily Clout audience, and here's what we found. Most often people are using Chrome. A lot of people have switched to Brave, which is awesome. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And I think Safari is really the other that was also a big piece of the pie. A lot of people using Gmail, and let's see. When we asked them what changes have you already made, a lot of people have switched search engines and web browsers, and a little bit of different stuff. But then when we asked, what's holding you back from making the change, right? It's two different things really are the biggest piece of things. A lot of people just don't know how. They just, who knows? Maybe your son or your daughter set you up with, set your computer up for you a few years ago, and now they're off to college or off on their career or whatever. And, you don't want to change it because you're afraid you're going to break something and not be able to fix it, right? I totally get that. Also, especially with email, you got all this history, right? And who wants to lose all that? That's a big deal, right? It's so convenient. That's how these guys have gotten us to where they are. That's how Gmail, how Google, how Facebook, how all these big tech platforms have gotten us to where they are, or we are. It's that they've made it so easy and free for us to just sit there providing them with everything they want to know about us, right? And they've made it super hard to leave, right? Or at least it seems that way. But it's actually not, and I'm going to show you a couple of things about how to do it. So I think if we address that, right, help people know how to do it and feel confident they're going to be able to do it without, derailing their whole life, and then make sure they can transition and keep all that history, then I think, we can take the barriers out of the process and let people get started, So in my mind, these are the things that can be done relatively easily, that if they're done by lots and lots of people, good things start happening. There are other things that we can do that I'm happy to talk about, like setting up a VPN. I've done that. In fact, a few months ago, I've been a PC user all my life, really. And, running a software company, changing from PC, wow, that was scary. But I switched to Linux a few months ago, and I set up a VPN on my Wi-Fi network, so now that it's all set up, it's pretty easy, and I don't really even miss the whole PC thing at all. It's a lot more affordable too. And Microsoft doesn't have their fingers on everything I'm doing, We're not going to address the how part of that today. I see some people posting some comments and links and things about VPNs and things in the chat, which is great. But I think what I want to do is we'll get back together maybe in a month or so, and maybe we'll dive more deeply into some of these more challenging things. But, in terms of things you can do right now, you can switch browsers. That's not a problem at all. You can switch your search engine, right? So now you're not using Chrome or Edge, and you're not using Google for your search engine. You can switch off of Gmail. That one's probably gives people a little more heartburn, but I'm going to show you in a minute. It doesn't have to be that difficult. And the other thing I would recommend is, start thinking about your shopping habits. Obviously, Amazon's a big part of that, and you don't have to buy from Amazon, right? You don't have to buy from any of these big box stores. Personally, when, there's some things that just buying online is it's the only way to go, right? And I'm not sitting here advocating for you to, disrupt your life or get yourself in a situation where life's not convenient anymore. You don't have to. You can use eBay. eBay's not throwing around their weight censoring people, so they may be big, but they're not a bad actor in the same way as Amazon, right? You can use Etsy, and there's lots of other sites out there that are really better in many ways. in terms of, like, for me, there's a Home Depot, right down the street. So it's so easy to jump in the car on the weekend and just stop in there and get everything you need, right? I got to drive a little further to find the Ace hardware store, right? But once I get there, I actually like it better. It's, they're local franchises, so they're locally owned. They're owned by the operator most often. And sometimes I got to also go by the lumber company that's around the corner from Ace Hardware to get some of the lumber I need or whatever, right? But so it's a little less convenient, but I feel a lot better about it when I'm done. So just to kind of start giving you an idea of how easy it can be, you can go on your iPhone right now and download Brave. I've been really, really pleased with it. I've tried a lot of other ones. I tried Opera, I've tried Firefox, I tried a few other ones. And, they all got their strengths and weaknesses. But Brave's definitely built from the ground up to be secure. And the thing I love about it is that it has its own search engine that is pretty darn good. So you're killing two birds with one stone there, right? You get off of you get off of Google Chrome, for instance, and you stop using Google as your search engine. So I highly recommend trying it out. If you're on an iPhone, you can, go to the App Store, download the Brave app, and then you just go to settings, and then you scroll down and you find the Brave app in the list of apps down there on the main settings page. And you'll see when you click on Brave, this is what you'll see. And you'll see this little default browser app button. You click on that and you choose Brave. And now that's your default browser. And anytime you click a link in an email or whatever, it's going to open up in Brave. So you're done with Chrome. And it's the same on an Android device as well. And it's the same on a PC or a Mac or a Linux machine or whatever you're using. Go to brave.com, download it. It'll figure out what kind of device you're on, and you'll download the right software. Let me just check a quick here at the questions. Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about phones that you can get. That's my next project. I haven't done that yet. I'm still on an iPhone, but I got an Android phone sitting here, and I want to install one of these non-Google operating systems and see if I can figure out how to make that work. Let's see. Let me go to the next slide here. Yeah, here's on desktop. One thing to bring up, again, one of the issues with making these changes is, what am I going to do with all the information I've accumulated in these systems, right? With the browser, it's really your bookmarks, right? Over the years, you've been to these different sites and you bookmarked them, and, you don't want to have to rebuild all that, right? Well, the good news is it's super easy to actually move them over, and they're pretty portable, and almost all of them work the same way. So whether you're using Chrome or Edge or Safari or something else right now, you go into settings and bookmarks, and you can download a bookmarks.html file. You just, there'll be some kind of export bookmarks option in the bookmarks settings bookmark in your browser. So you can download your bookmarks into an HTML file. You don't need to worry about understanding what an HTML is or how to read it or anything. When you install Brave or whatever other browser you install, you just go and load the bookmarks from the HTML. So you go to the bookmarks in Brave and import that bookmark.html file, and now all your bookmarks are there in your new browser. Yeah, there's a bunch of great comments showing up. Somebody's recommending Swiss Cows. That is one I have not used. That's a search engine. Dissenter. there's really not a shortage of alternatives. It's just a matter of getting started. And your needs will be different than mine, and what works for you will be different. But I think Brave's an easy first step, and then you might switch on to something else. Some people talking about open source document system. So instead of using Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint and all that stuff from Microsoft, you can use LibreOffice, which is what, if you, like me, switch to a Linux machine, that's going to be your default tools. And really, that was one of the things I was worried about the most. It turns out it really was a non-issue, that those LibreOffice applications will open all the Microsoft formats. They'll save documents back into Microsoft format. So if you need to share them with other people who are still using Microsoft, it's not a problem. Let's see here. Sarah's asking, what is a Linux machine? So Linux is a operating system. It's an alternative to Mac OS and Windows that's open source, and it's not owned, quote unquote, by anybody. Okay, now let's talk about switch and mail programs. One of the reasons I have started using Proton, and one of the reasons I recommend it for a first step, at least, is that it's easy to keep all your Gmail history. So you just go to protonmail.com, and they have their different plans you can look at. They have a free plan that for your individual use is probably plenty. If you got more than one address and you're using it for business and need more storage and stuff, they have some plans that are affordable, less than $10 a month. They're based in Switzerland. That's where all their servers are, and everything is encrypted. So, nobody can be spying on what's in your emails, and the US government can't just walk in their front door and say, hand it over or you're in trouble. It's a little different in Switzerland, right? So that's all good from my perspective. And you can see here, once you get your Proton Mail account set up, if you go into the settings, there's this import via easy switch. And you can import all your mail from Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, and some other options as well. So if you feel like you're stuck in Gmail because of all that history, all those emails that you've exchanged over the years, it transfers into Proton Mail, and you can search it. It actually worked better than I expected, really. So I would give that a try. I highly recommend it. I should also mention, we are not getting paid for any of these recommendations. We're not affiliates of these people or anything. It's just, as I mentioned, I've been kind of experimenting with this over the last few months, and these are the easy options that I've found. Let's see. I think somebody's recommending Thunderbird, which is a free open source program that, has some encryption options. Smart Mail, or I think it's Start Mail is one also that I've heard a lot of people say good things about that you can try. But to me, again, the key detail is, can they transfer your Gmail or Outlook or whatever emails, your history into the system easily? That's golden in my view. Because I didn't want to have to spend, a week trying to get everything sorted out. I just don't have that time, right? Okay, so just philosophically speaking, I want to use Twitter as an example here, but they're just an example. The same thing really could be said of all these big tech platforms that we're talking about here. In my view, in spite of the fact that Elon Musk has come to their rescue, Twitter's dead. You know, what frustrates the heck out of me is all these people that you hear on our side of the football, you know, in the freedom community, are, you know, showing up on shows and so on. And when they talk about, you know, how do people get in touch with you? They're talking about Twitter. And then ensues a 5-minute conversation about how they're trying not to get shut down, or they were shut down, but now they're not, and they're back now. And who needs that? Why are we so loyal to Twitter? It doesn't make any sense, you know, especially now that Getter and Parler and Truth Social have all done so well. And Gab, yeah, there's somebody in the chat saying Gab. That's one I didn't put on here, but should have been. So my point is, these big tech platforms have already dug their own grave with what they've done, right? All we're doing by continuing to use them and by continuing to talk about them is prolonging their death. Let's go ahead and let them end it. Just walk away. You know? I really think that's the answer here. Let's see. I pulled this email, which I got from Project Veritas here a few days ago. You know, it's still a huge thing to them. As I mentioned earlier, they're suing, I don't know who all now, but the FBI, Twitter, and Microsoft, because Twitter and Microsoft were asked by the FBI to hand over a bunch of information about Project Veritas, including all their emails and a lot of, you know, what you would hope would be private information. And it turns out the whole investigation was based on, you know, false information and so on, right? So that's the basis of the suit. But that's not the point. The point is Project Veritas is still running around trying to get back on Twitter. What for? You know, I don't get it. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Project Veritas. They've done incredible stuff. But the future of people that want to be free is not on Twitter, and it's not on Gmail, and it's not on, you know, it's not on Google or YouTube, right? There's now Rumble. You know, there are viable options that are springing up now to all of these big tech platforms that have shown themselves to be bad actors, right? To me, it's a combination of things. Number one, there is just too big, right? Remember in the banking crisis, there was too big to fail, right? In my view, it should have been too big to be saved, right? We should have let them crash. We'd all be better off now, in my opinion. Same thing with these big tech platforms. They're just too big and they have too much power and influence, right? So we don't want to try and get them back. They're still going to be big and powerful and way too influential, right? What we want to do is create a marketplace where there's lots of alternatives, right? Yeah, now there's people in the chat talking about, you know, banking issues, which is a whole other can of worms, of course, which is definitely worth spending some time on. We're looking into this right now. I'm looking into it for my business. Daily Clout's looking into it. It's something we all have to be concerned about. And we need to know what the options are, what options are safe. You know, with a lot of this, it comes down to there's no perfect option, right? There's just trade-offs, you know? And so that's one of my goals is let's try to at least get the data pulled together and organized so that you can see what the trade-offs are clearly, you know, and make a smart decision for yourself, whether it be about a browser or a search engine or, you know, the credit card processing that you're using on your website. It's hard to get information about, you know, I mean, they're not going to tell you, yeah, we'll shut you down if the government comes and asks us to, right? They're not going to tell you that. There are a few, though, that are saying they won't, right? So that's encouraging. Just the fact that they are saying that as a marketing ploy is encouraging on its face. If they're being truthful in any way, that's very encouraging, right? Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about TikTok. Yeah. As far as I know, everything that happens on TikTok goes right back to the CCP. You know, if it was something I was using, I would be more concerned about TikTok. It's just my kid, you know, so he'll probably grow out of it. Let's see, just looking at some of the questions. What I wanted to do actually is now let me take your opinion about a few things. First of all, I'm going to share with you, if I can figure this out here, the slides. So if anybody wants to get a copy of the slides, there's a few links in there that might be helpful. That is now in the chat area. You'll see a handouts tab at the top. It's downloading right now. But now let me take a poll on a few things. Let's just find out, what browser are you guys using right now? Just so I have a sense of where you all are. I don't have the, you know, the ones we've been talking, the safer ones, I guess, listed here. The polling tool only gives me so many options, but looks like Safari and Chrome are really the winners. Let me see. You guys should be seeing the live results of the poll. If you're not, let me know in the chat. I'm going to do another one now. What search engine are you using? Ruth's making a point about Give, Send, Go and GoFundMe. That's a really good point, Ruth. And I will go back and research it. But if I'm not mistaken, I know that the truckers were using GoFundMe initially, and they shut them down, and that was it. But then they moved to Give, Send, Go, and then Give, Send, Go ultimately shut them down also. However, I think it was a little more complicated in that case, and so your point's a good one. I think they were kind of basically forced by the Canadian government to do it. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So it looks like a lot of people have switched to DuckDuckGo, which is good. However, this is a really important point. DuckDuckGo uses the Bing search algorithm. That's the Microsoft search algorithm. So there just is a different front end on Microsoft search. So Microsoft is still getting all that data. So you really should think about something else. Again, I really like the Brave option. There's another one that I've tried a little bit, and you know, it works great. It's not as robust because it's very, very focused on, you know, fully vetting the results. Like, you know, you're not going to see results in there that aren't somebody hasn't looked at it and made sure it's a site that can be trusted. And that's Free Spoke. It's free, FREESPOKE.com. So you might check that out too. Okay. If I can get my mouse to work here, let's do, another poll. Okay, now what email program are you using? Wow, a lot of people already on Proton. That's cool. And a lot of people on Gmail. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm really surprised how many people have already switched to Proton. That's great. Way to go, y'all. That's awesome. So that brings me to my next question, which is, what's next on your agenda of sort of breaking the chains of big tech? What are the things that you haven't managed to do yet that you want to do? Let me know what those things are, and then we'll start preparing some more in-depth dives into those, how to actually do it. We'll just live go through it. Actually, if we can, set it up, try it out, give you some feedback on what works and what doesn't, get some other folks that are even have more expertise, so on. Let's see, a lot of people want to set up a VPN, switch wireless carriers, and a lot of people want to get off of Gmail. Let's see. What I did was I've been making videos about this, about all these different changes as I went along and made these changes myself. So what I did is I put all those videos into a campaign on Daily Clout earlier today. So you guys can get that, take a look at those videos. So those of you guys that want to, switch your browser or switch away from Gmail, then just go check out this campaign on Daily Clout. And you will you'll be able to see all those videos, and it'll just walk you through exactly how to do it. Yeah. Kay is saying forget the ring stuff. Yeah, so as a precinct chair, I'm really surprised. It's amazing as I'm going around knocking on doors, trying to encourage all the people in my precinct to get out and vote, right? Everybody's got one of those things. And man, that thing it's recording everything, when you come, when you go. If you think it's only recording what's happening outside your house, you're wrong. I got rid of all my series and all that stuff. Sarah's saying that it's, it's kind of handy, right? It is, can be, a good safety device, right? I've seen a lot of cool, funny videos, right, of how the Ring system catches those people that are grabbing your Amazon packages off the porch or whatever, but it's recording everything, and it's all going into a big data center where it's sitting there just waiting for, Uncle Sam to come knocking and say, hey, I want to know about everything that ever happened in your house. That's the downside. There's a cost for all this convenience, especially when it's free. That's the warning bell, right? I've gotten to the point now where I don't trust something that does something useful for me, but doesn't cost me anything, right? There's a reason, Let's see. Yeah, so maybe we'll get into, based on you guys' answers to the polls, I'd really like to get into the wireless carrier option. But that's kind of a can of worms. There's a lot of different options. You can stay with the big carriers, but do things on your iPhone or your Android phone that make it, less likely or more difficult for people to spy on you. And then there's whole other carrier platforms you can go with that aren't iPhone or Android, and they're not AT&T, and they're not Verizon, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different things to explore there. We probably have to break that down a little bit. The VPN thing, I'll just tell you guys right now, what I did is I found a wireless router, for your home, your wireless box, that has the little antennas on it, that has a VPN option built into it. And so basically anybody that connects to my Wi-Fi, they're going through the VPN. And nobody even really knows it. There's a few times it'll come up, like there's some sites that won't let you connect to them via a VPN because they require the ability to track you, So that's interesting to learn. Yeah, that's something we can get into. I will, I'll make sure and put on the campaign that is on Daily Clout, I'll put a link to that specific router that I got. It was pretty easy to set up. And they had pretty good, help materials on their website. It wasn't too tough. So if you guys want to check that out, you can. And then, we'll start planning what's next, right? I think VPN, wireless, and banking. Those are three. What I'm hearing from you guys tonight is those are three things that are pretty high on the list. Oh, and Cassandra's saying, meeting platforms, right? Alternatives to Zoom. That is a great point. I've played around with that too. And what I've started using is called Jitsi, which it's an open source platform, which can be good. But it's kind of been, it's been sort of hijacked by different people in different ways. And so it kind of depends on where you use it as to how the data is being collected and recorded. A big telecom company bought the main brand, Jitsi. So they're, there's no reason to think they're any different than Google. But there's, I was able to install Jitsi myself on my own server and use it that way, which means I'm the only person that has access to that data, right? But that's not for everybody. But it's a good point. We need alternatives, right? If anybody has found alternatives to like Google Meet or Zoom that you really like, then you let us know. If you're meeting through Zoom is basically Chinese, so that's kind of like TikTok. And then you got Google, which is the other most popular one. And, that's Google. So one way or the other, there are people looking at that data, getting access to that data in your meeting that you probably don't want having that information. I would, unfortunately, I am not aware of any really great alternatives for meetings and stuff that don't go through some big tech platform. Sounds like a business opportunity to me. All right. Well, I think I had one last slide here. Yeah. a couple of things that you might want to check out to do some reading and learn more about all this. I mentioned earlier Glenn Greenwald. He's one of the reporters that was central in breaking the story about Edward Snowden, and he's just really on the cutting edge of surveillance and the government and big tech right now. And so he's got a Substack. He's always publishing new stuff. Some of it's pretty scary, so be ready. But I would definitely check that out. And also something that's a little more practical maybe is a book called How to Destroy Surveillance Capitalism by Cory Doctorow, who I love as an author. He's really good. He kind of does some, not really sci-fi, but fiction that is really good. But he also does some nonfiction. And this book, he just kind of breaks it down. Here's how we, not just as individuals, but as a movement, can undermine the power of these giant corporations that are spying on us, right? Reading that book was a big part of how I came to the view that it really isn't as hard as you think. We just have to start doing it, and it becomes like a waterfall, and everything sort of comes along. But we got to do it. Just watch, right? After we got the election on Tuesday, there's going to be some craziness, and that the powers that be are not going to like some of that craziness that, that's being talked about, and they're going to start in with their censorship again. I'm betting on it, So now's the time to get off of those platforms. There's people talking about Signal. We've, with our Pfizer volunteers have used Signal real successfully. Amy says that they really like it, and they've created subgroups and things. And it's an encrypted messaging platform. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. There's another one that starts with a T that's kind of the competitor, but I'm totally drawing a blank. I'm sorry. You can create a little group. It's almost like Telegram. There you go. Thank you, Kay. Telegram and Signal are kind of similar. You can create little groups and have secure chat within the group. So those are good options, as opposed to like a Slack or a Skype even, But these are all great suggestions. Really appreciate you guys' input. And like I said, I'll put some more links to some of the things we talked about in that campaign, so you guys can take a look at that. And then we'll start working on VPNs and wireless carriers and meeting platforms. And we'll get back together when we have, can really give you some helpful input on that. Another great point, document sharing platforms. Google Docs is the dominant player there, and obviously it's Google. So there's a lot of options there, and it really just kind of depends on your needs. But we'll get some information about some of those alternatives that I've looked at least. You guys go follow that campaign, okay? Go join the campaign, because that way, when we have new links, you're going to get alerted about it. And I'll be reaching out to you to kind of take your temperature and see, what you've tried, and make sure that when we get back together and talk about VPNs or meeting platforms or whatever, we're not just recommending the ones that I've looked at, but the ones that you've had good experience with as well. So you can be part of the solution here. So Timothy, you go to dailyclout.io and click on campaigns at the top, and then just look for the bring down Big Tech campaign. And you can follow it there. So do that. You should be seeing a link here in the meeting. But if you don't, you'll get an email later tonight with the recording of the webinar and a link to the campaign, so you can find all the videos that I talked about and follow the campaign and so on. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Sorry we got off to a late start, but I think we got it done in about an hour, so that's good. I know everybody's busy. Get back to your happy life, and let's just make sure that it's more private and not feeding the big giant monster Big Tech as we go forward. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout, and I am asking you to please, if you like the video you just saw, support us, become a member, donate. You can send checks to P.O. Box 24, Millerton, New York, 12546, or go to Daily Clout, DAILYCLOUT, become a member or donate. Thank you so much for your support. Every penny goes for paying our hardworking staff, paying hosting costs, and paying our lawyers who have been leading the fight to keep you safe and free, to keep the Constitution safe and to keep you free. Thank you so much.